What began as an ordinary afternoon turned into a moment that would later dominate conversations across the city. The billionaire, accustomed to the structured life of boardrooms and luxury estates, had decided to take an unplanned stroll near a city park adjacent to his property. It was a rare choice for him to venture out without prior notice, and he had no expectation of encountering anything out of the ordinary. As he walked along the pathway, something unusual caught his eye. His young daughter, usually guided by private tutors and surrounded by carefully controlled learning environments, was seated on a simple wooden bench, fully absorbed in a lesson. What immediately drew his attention was not just the focus in her eyes, but the presence of a teenage girl standing before her, quietly teaching with nothing but a worn notebook and a pen. Her clothes were faded, her hair tied back loosely, and yet there was a calm authority in the way she explained the concepts, her gestures gentle but precise. Instead of rushing forward, the billionaire paused, observing from a distance. The girl was clearly guiding his daughter step by step, breaking down problems with patience and clarity, drawing diagrams on scrap paper when needed. There were no digital devices, no formal teaching tools, only her knowledge and her ability to communicate it effectively. His daughter, usually hesitant in front of tutors, asked questions freely and smiled as she understood concepts that had previously frustrated her. It was a scene so unexpected that the billionaire found himself momentarily rooted to the spot, grappling with a mix of curiosity, surprise, and admiration. For all his wealth and access to the best educational resources, he realized that this girl, whom society had largely ignored, was achieving what expensive tutors often could not: genuine understanding, confidence, and engagement. As he continued to watch, he noticed the subtle but significant way the girl adapted to his daughter's pace, adjusting explanations and offering encouragement rather than correction or pressure. The billionaire felt a wave of discomfort and humility. Here was a young girl with no formal training, no social standing, and no recognition, yet she possessed a level of patience, empathy, and skill that his meticulously selected tutors often lacked. The realization struck him that the qualities that truly foster learning, attention, encouragement, and understanding, were not necessarily bought or taught in exclusive institutions. They could emerge from the most unexpected places, often carried by those whom the world overlooks. This chance encounter became more than a lesson in arithmetic or reading, it became a reflection of broader truths. He observed the interaction quietly, recognizing the rarity of such moments, where human connection and education intersect naturally, free from societal expectations or material measures of success. His daughter's engagement and curiosity, unpressured and authentic, highlighted the stark contrast between formal structures and organic, heartfelt guidance. For the billionaire, this was the beginning of a journey, not just for his daughter's learning, but for his own understanding of value, privilege, and the unexpected power of compassion. It was a moment that, though brief, carried the weight of lessons far beyond the pages of any textbook, reshaping perspectives and planting the seeds for actions that would soon surprise everyone. As the billionaire continued to watch, he began to understand that what he was witnessing was far more than a simple tutoring session. According to those familiar with the park, the homeless girl had been coming there every day, offering help to children who struggled with schoolwork. She did not ask for money, recognition, or attention. Her presence was quiet but purposeful, a steady commitment to helping others learn despite her own circumstances. Parents and passers-by initially overlooked her, unsure what to make of a young girl with tattered clothes teaching their children. Over time, however, the improvements in the children who received her guidance became noticeable. They returned to her, eager for help, and word spread quietly through the neighborhood. What drew the billionaire's attention was the calm authority she exuded without claiming any authority at all. She did not impose rules or demand obedience, she simply explained, demonstrated, and guided with patience and precision. He learned that her own story was one of both brilliance and hardship. She had once been a top student, celebrated for her academic achievements and praised by teachers for her intelligence and determination. But a sudden tragedy had uprooted her life. The loss of her parents, compounded by the lack of any supportive system, forced her into homelessness. Even so, she refused to abandon her education. She carried her textbooks, notebooks, and pen as her most valuable possessions, relying on knowledge as her sole source of strength. Teaching others was not a performance or an attempt to gain attention, it was a responsibility she had chosen for herself, a way to ensure that children around her would not face the struggles she had endured without guidance. What impressed the billionaire most was the girl's ability to adapt her teaching to the needs of each child. She would slow down when a child struggled, provide encouragement when they succeeded, and explain difficult concepts in multiple ways until they were understood. There was no rush, no frustration, and no sense of superiority. She measured success not in grades or scores, but in the confidence and understanding that children gained with each lesson. Watching this, the billionaire realized that no amount of wealth or privilege could replace the combination of empathy, dedication, and clarity that this girl brought to her teaching. The contrast between the rigid, performance-driven methods of tutors and her compassionate approach was stark and humbling. His daughter's reaction further revealed the depth of the girl's impact. A child who had often been tense or hesitant in private tutoring sessions now leaned forward eagerly, asked questions freely, and expressed satisfaction in her own progress. The billionaire felt an unfamiliar unease. All the resources, all the structured lessons, all the hours of investment in private tutors had failed to evoke the engagement and joy that this girl had sparked in his daughter. It became clear to him that education was not just about access to resources, but about connection, understanding, and the way knowledge was shared. In that moment, he recognized a fundamental truth. Sometimes the most meaningful teaching comes from those the world chooses to overlook, and the greatest lessons are delivered not in grand classrooms or with expensive tools, but in spaces where compassion and patience guide the learning process. What followed in the days after the encounter was as unexpected as the moment itself. The billionaire could have treated the situation as a fleeting curiosity, a brief interruption to his meticulously controlled life, but he chose otherwise. Instead of taking immediate action to control the situation or make it public, he quietly sought to understand more about the girl who had so profoundly impacted his daughter. He inquired discreetly about her background, her needs, and her circumstances, not to expose her story, but to ensure her safety and dignity. When he finally approached her directly, it was not with authority or obligation, but with simple gratitude. He thanked her for helping his daughter, acknowledging the skill, patience, and compassion she had demonstrated, and this gesture visibly unsettled her, as recognition from anyone, let alone someone of his status, was something she had never expected. Soon, practical steps were taken to transform her circumstances. He arranged safe, stable housing for her, providing security without imposing conditions or pressure. For the first time, she had a place to rest, study, and live without the uncertainty that had defined her daily existence. Healthcare, counseling, and access to educational resources were provided, ensuring that her well-being was addressed holistically. More importantly, she was given the freedom to continue her education, returning to formal schooling while maintaining the independence and purpose she had cultivated through her work with children in the park. What had once been a survival-driven routine was now replaced by opportunity, yet she retained her own voice, perspective, and autonomy. The billionaire's actions did not stop at personal support. He invited the girl to contribute to an educational initiative he had previously managed as a corporate responsibility. Rather than positioning her as a symbolic figure or using her story for publicity, he empowered her to help design programs for underprivileged children. Her first-hand experience brought insights that transformed the approach of the foundation, emphasizing patience, mentorship, and emotional safety over rigid metrics and high-pressure expectations. Her guidance challenged traditional methods and highlighted the power of empathy and lived experience in shaping effective education. Within his family, changes were equally profound. His daughter's learning environment was restructured to prioritize curiosity over performance. Private tutors were instructed to foster understanding, encourage questions, and allow mistakes as part of the learning process. Community engagement became a core element of her education, ensuring that she learned not only academics but also compassion, perspective, and responsibility. The billionaire himself underwent a transformation, recognizing that wealth and power alone could not create impact or understanding. The encounter with the homeless girl had reshaped his view of privilege, education, and human connection, revealing that true influence comes from recognizing and nurturing potential wherever it exists. As the story spread, public reactions ranged from admiration to skepticism. Some questioned his motives, while others celebrated the humility and thoughtfulness of his actions. Yet the enduring impact was undeniable. A girl who had been invisible to society was now empowered to rebuild her life, not as a token, but as a person with agency and purpose. And a man who had once measured success by control and material gain learned a profound truth. The most meaningful changes often emerge not from wealth or authority, but from the courage to see, acknowledge, and support those the world tends to overlook.